Good evening, friends. We start with an about-face from the White House on Russia and Syria. Over the weekend, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, promised sanctions on Russia for backing the Syrian government. Now the White House is saying Haley's words were a misstatement. The Treasury Department says today that they will not place further sanctions on the Russian government. Manila Chan has been following the story and joins us for more on this. This kind of cuts to Nikki Haley's credibility, number one, but it is truly a reversal.
Just a little bit into Nikki Haley there. These latest rounds of sanctions were supposed to be different than the previous sanctions we've seen in that the intended targets, Ed, were tacitly meant to attack oligarchs that are closest to Vladimir Putin. But now, as you said, the White House is doing this sudden about-face about the entire thing. So it may have been because the U.S. would stand alone in this action against Russia. On the heels of that Allied missile strike into Syria just days ago, EU foreign ministers were not in favor of joining the U.S. on imposing new sanctions on either Russia or Syria. England's foreign secretary said this: "It is very important to stress the strikes are not an attempt to change the tide of the war in Syria or have a regime change." He went on to say that the strikes were simply to stop any further alleged chemical strikes. Johnson's remarks much more measured than those of U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who had this to say on her rounds doing the Sunday morning talk shows.
So you will see that Russian sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday, if he hasn't already, and they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use. And so I think everyone is going to feel it at this point. I think everyone knows that we sent a strong message, and our hope is that they listen to it.
And now, less than 24 hours later, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says that they are only considering new sanctions on Russia, but a final decision on the matter has yet to be made. Those would-be sanctions were aimed at big Russian businesses like aluminum and steel factories and other companies that U.S. intelligence say aid in Syria in getting their chemical weapons put together. So, Ed, it's unclear at this point what the options might actually be that are on the table, or if the Trump administration might take any further action at all against Russia. Certainly a tumultuous day that gives a little bit of insight into the confusion that might be happening behind closed doors.
Well, I'm curious if Nikki Haley is saying that she did a misstatement. I mean, in her comment there, it was, if he hasn't already. So it sounded pretty definite that they had a decision and then they reversed it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Manila.